It's here, it's happening, boys. We have officially lived long enough to even see Warhammer go woke.
There's been a bit of a ruckus in the Warhammer 40k community in recent days after the parent company Games Workshop decided to make some changes to the lore of their fictional universe.
Don't worry, it's just small changes. Don't worry about it. It's fine. You won't even notice them. They're so small you shouldn't even talk about it, honestly.
And well, they haven't exactly been well received. But what changes did they make to cause such a backlash, you might ask? Well, this is where I'm gonna have to delve into the lore a little bit, so indulge me. The simplistic view is that Warhammer 40k is set in a fictional future where mankind is locked into a state of constant warfare across the galaxy, and has devolved into a kind of quasi-religious military dictatorship where humans
aka everything that us men want to see in a fantasy series. It's beautiful.
and life is cheap, and all that matters is the survival of the Imperium. To quote the company themselves, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war. Nice.
Yeah.
It's a neat setting for tabletop wargaming, and there's an absolute metric ton of lore and history that's gradually been built up around it over the decades. In fact, you can actually ignore the gaming side of things altogether and just immerse yourself in the fictional worlds. There's more than enough books, short stories, graphic novels, video games, and magazine articles to keep you amused for decades. Anyway, one of the most...
That is, by the way, not an overstatement. There literally is enough lore for you to be immersed in it for, you know, years upon non-stop reading and whatnot.
iconic symbols of the 40k universe has got to be the Space Marines, genetically and surgically enhanced super soldiers wrapped up in power armor that are deployed to the most critical war zones across the galaxy.
And all of whom literally have autism and zero social skills. It is hilarious also.
They're the very apex of human warfare, and the elite amongst them are the custodes, the personal bodyguards of the Emperor of Mankind.
The Golden Boys.
In short, these are not guys with whom to fuck. Now, there's a lot of lore surrounding the Space Marines and the Custodes themselves, how they're created and how they function, but one of the most fundamental aspects of their creation is that they're all male, hence the reason they're all referred to as
Yup, because women are not physically strong enough to survive the process. There is a ton of lore describing a lot of things about this, by the way.
Battle Brothers. I know, right? Who would have thought that an oppressive, xenophobic, totalitarian military regime wouldn't have diversity and inclusion initiatives? The reasons for this are a combination of established lore, the target audience, and, well, basic common sense. From the lore side of things, the process for creating Space Marines is only compatible with male physiology, and there's no way to adapt it to work on female bodies. The super advanced technology used...
Oh, and by the way, even amongst males, the survival rate for becoming an Astartes is pretty low.
To do it is barely even understood by this point in history, and to be honest, there's never been a whole lot of incentive to pursue it because, well, what's the point? Only the strongest, toughest, and most resilient individuals can even hope to survive the process of being turned into a Space Marine, much less a Custodes. To put it into context, less than a fraction of 1% of the population would even be considered as candidates, which pretty much rules women out of the equation, so it always seemed like a question that basically answered itself. And if I had to guess, I'd say a lot of this probably comes down to Games Workshop having a solid...
Oh, and by the way, this is just, as he said, literally pure logic. There is no ulterior motive. It is just logic. The strongest women in real life are comparable roughly to average males. Literally the strongest women are comparable to average, or maybe if we're talking about literal the peak of women physiology, they're comparable to slightly above average males. It's not even close.
understanding of their target.
So even if a peak physical condition male can survive this process, that just fundamentally makes them completely impossible for a woman to survive this just on the physical stress alone.
The audience and what they like. Because, how can I put this? Not all that many girls are into tabletop wargaming.
You don't say.
There's some, for sure, I'm not taking anything away from them, but generally if I had to pick the people who are most likely to be into things like Warhammer, well, it's gonna be guys like this. And
Yeah, looked kind of accurate.
For a good 30 years or so, everyone seemed pretty happy with that state of affairs. The problem is that Warhammer started to get popular, really popular, and so it was only a matter of time before it attracted the attention of modern audiences.
Effectively also nowadays known as tourists. They literally see something they like, or presumably like, they get interested in it, and then they like it for like a week or whatever. And in that time, they don't understand things, they demand new things happen, and whatnot. And that's how they ruin a franchise, because everyone is like, okay, we hear you, you want this, we're gonna add this. And they add it, and they're gone already. By the time it's added, they're gone. And what do you do now? Nothing. Tourists ruin everything.
Not tabletop gamers playing today, of course, or even just women who happen to enjoy the hobby, but instead activists who totally don't give a shit about anything to do with 40k, but just want to score
Also them, yes.
another little victory in the endless war to dominate every single aspect of entertainment and culture. The push to make the world of 40k more diverse and inclusive has been going on for a while now, and one of the big objectives they've been gunning for—
It's literally been going on for years at this point, honestly, but this is now where it's finally happening.
—or is female space marines. Because truly, what woman doesn't want to see herself represented as a psychopathic 8-foot-tall genetically engineered killing machine?
I would argue normal women that I would like to have conversations with. Okay?
It doesn't matter to these people that 30 years of lore says it can't be done. It doesn't matter that most actual gamers don't want to see it happen. It doesn't matter that there's already entire armies of female-only soldiers specifically created to give—
Yeah, this is funny. The Sisters of Battle, oh, they exist and there's no males amongst them? That's fine, but how dare you not allow women to be space marines? How dare you? But what about the sister? It is so sad. And again, this is the classical problem. When you give them the pinky, they take the whole arm, or whatever that saying goes. You know, they're gonna do this. If female space marines become a thing, and considering I almost said GGG, but considering Games Workshop has already made their response and it's absolutely atrocious, pitiful, and, well, woke as all hell can be, you know what's gonna happen next? Actually, he probably shows it, right, somewhere? Yep, he does.
Women more of a presence in the game worlds. All that matters is winning,
drinker.
breaking down another barrier, homogenizing and blending everything together into an indistinguishable grey sludge of inclusion, gleefully taking another treasured thing away from their enemies so they can—
Also, the fact that there's not pink-haired tyranids, completely non-acceptable in the modern day.
gloat about it and push for even greater victories next time. And a few days ago, they moved one step closer to their goal with the release of a new rulebook from Games Workshop, where it casually dropped in the fact that female custodes are now apparently a thing.
Yeah.
Fuck. That's pretty interesting, considering they've literally never been spoken about before, and everything we know about them suggests that can't happen, but okay.
Yep.
Okay, sure. Naturally, fans were confused by this, and when they were questioned about it on Twitter, Games Workshop's response was simple and blunt. Since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And when something like this happens, it's not long. It doesn't take long. It's gonna take a year or two, and Games Workshop is gonna be, what do you mean, the Emperor of Mankind? It's the indigenous, diverse, they, them, female Emperor of Mankind. The Emperor has always been a black indigenous female. What do you mean? This is how these things happen. They literally don't give a shit when they start doing this. They just do it, and if you don't like it, well, boom. Well, let's see how this goes with them, honestly. Diablo got completely ruined by forsaking their previous audiences and pivoting to a new audience that didn't even exist, but they wanted for some reason. Let's see how this ends for Warhammer. When they completely forsake all the people who liked it for what it was, and now go after this magical audience of inclusivity that doesn't exist for one, 2 will not buy their things. Let's see how this ends for them.
Liar! You know, I can't help thinking that you guys are trying to do a bit of rewriting of history here. I can't help thinking that you finally started to bow to pressure from modern audiences, and you were almost certainly encouraged to do this by a sudden infusion of investment money from BlackRock.
Ooh, look at that. Nice.
I can't help thinking that maybe you're trying to gaslight your own fans into believing.
Hey, he should actually show, Drinker should show the clip where BlackRock is like, well, yeah, no one likes diversity, but we're gonna push it anyway, because you need to make these things pushed. You need to force them on people. Dude, when was the last time when forcing something on people that they want work out well? Oh yeah, never. Oh yeah, in the history of humanity, literally never. Interesting.
We've always been at war with East Asia. And apparently, I'm not the only one. But Drinker, you absolute titan of tabletop tactics, I hear you say, the 40k universe is rife with misinformation, retcons and rewrites. Things are constantly being changed and added to the lore, so why should this be any different?
I don't remember asking you a...
Well, technically that's, I guess, true, even though I'm not a huge lore buff about 40k, but yeah, retcons do happen. Well, it's not even retcons. The thing about the Warhammer lore is the fact that you get to see it from different aspects. So, an aspect that you are seeing an already known outcome from could actually be incorrect because their information is technically not full when they make their decisions in a story. So, that's a thing. But yeah, retcons have been made, but those are not the biggest retcons. You know? And to be fair, I'm gonna defend this for just, half a second. With the new Primaris Space Marines, made by Vile? What's his name? I forgot. That guy? Maybe, because, it's a modification of the Emperor's work, right? So, maybe there is a way to actually make females into Space Marines or semi-Space Marines, because, again, this is him actually pushing the technology forward, not just waiting for the magic STC to be uncovered so, everything can be done for him. So, there is a technical way to actually make it canon and make it kind of viable. And it honestly, if you do it well enough, I'm actually completely okay technically with the idea that since the Primaris got made, and, the galaxy's in a worse state than it has ever been before, and you need all hands on deck that possibly can be, that, even semi-powerful, even semi-space marines in the form of females can be used, and need to be used for the war. That could happen, but, very low chance that would ever work out, but there is technically a way to actually implement it. Technically. Now, I'm not saying they should, because this is honestly kind of an overcomplication of things, but, Also, what's the point of having the Sisters of Battle and whatnot if you're just going to make female Space Marines? That kind of completely makes them irrelevant?
Goddamn thing.
Well, let me stop you there, heretic, because there's a few little misconceptions that I'd like to clear up on this one. The development of the Warhammer universe over the past 30 years is less of a constantly shifting chessboard and more like a telescope that's slowly coming into focus. In the early days, back in the 80s, things were intentionally vague and a lot of details were still waiting to be filled in because the developers hadn't worked everything out yet. But over the years, those details have been filled in with hundreds of articles, books, games and rule sets, and while certain details might have been corrected and expanded on many times over, the general setting, history, characters, rulebooks and foundations of the world have actually stayed extremely consistent. So no...
Extremely stupid to a degree. You know what I kind of don't like? I don't like animations like this.
To be filled in.
Like, look at this.
Because the developer...
Okay, you see? That's one of the big boys. That's no rando. That's a Space Marine, okay? And the thing about this is, when I see these animations where Space Marines are just getting randomly gunned down, I'm like, that shouldn't really ever happen, because 10,000 Space Marines are enough to take over a fucking planet in like a week or something. Okay? So, Well, lore-wise, 10,000 Space Marines are. I think they are enough to take over the average planet in a week or some shit like that. But, here they're just getting shot and dying like flies, which is kind of already not great in my opinion.
Indeed, on many times over, the general setting, history, characters, rulebooks, and foundations of the world have actually stayed extremely consistent. So no, that excuse doesn't wash with me anymore, boyo. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, the lore is something you should respect enough to work around instead of constantly changing. Because believe it or not, people actually get invested in this stuff. They buy into the fictional world you've created, and the more you fuck with that, the more difficult you make it for those people to stay invested, because they know that at any moment some prick might decide to completely rewrite it to suit their own selfish bullshit needs. But Drinker, it's just one little change. Why do you care so much if there's female custodes? That's an interesting question, but here's an even better one. Why did you care so much that there weren't female custodes? Why did it—
the classic. Oh, why do you care that much? Well, if it's not a big deal, then why do we even need it? Shut up. God, I hate when someone tries to pull this dumb argument. Why do you care so much? Why do you care so much if it doesn't matter?
Did it bother you so much that you've spent years complaining about it? Why do you feel so strongly that this thing must be changed? And why do you get so defensive when people question you about it? As heel versus babyface so correctly observed, it's really easy to ask the old "why do you care so much" question once you've gotten what you want. It's easy to defend the status quo once the status quo has been changed to suit your demands. Until of course you've decided that it has to change again, in which case you certainly will care about this stuff again. And make no mistake, they will demand that more things be changed to suit them. And I guess that's the real crux of this argument here. It's the reason Warhammer fans are pushing back so loudly against it. It's not just what the change is, although that's pretty bad all by itself, but it's what it represents that's the bigger issue. It's the sacrifice of artistic freedom on the altar of identity politics. This right here, boys and girls, is the thin edge of the wedge. It's the first little crack in the dam that'll eventually become a gaping hole. Because here's the thing, the moment you make any concession, no matter how tiny, you've already given the game away. You've made it known that you're prepared to bow down to their demands if they put enough—
Yeah, true. I mean, look at what happened. Everyone started yelling, bullying bad. And now look at America. Half of America is literally the equivalent of mental health patients running amok. Why? Because bullies bad. Bullies were holding the dam of the mentally ill from actually infiltrating society and ruining it. Same with Warhammer. Again, it is what it is.
Pressure on you, and so inevitably their demands are never going to end. They'll literally never be happy because there's always going to be some other thing, some other piece of problematic lore, some other rule or exclusionary detail that has to be altered to comply with their constantly evolving demands, and all in the name of inclusion and diversity.
Yeah, the funny part is this inclusion garbage doesn't end. They demand, and they don't stop demands. The demands only stop at the point where it has gotten so insane that they are starting to destroy each other because they finally figure out, wait a minute, everyone around me that is woke is not nearly woke enough or not nearly as big of a victim as me, so they should kind of bow down to the most woke and most victimhood impersonator, and then they destroy themselves. It's a crazy cycle.
Diversity. Because these people don't care about your hobby. They don't care about integrating into a community of like-minded individuals. All they care about is that the community bends and reshapes itself to suit them until eventually they bend it so much that it breaks. People like that are complete and utter poison for any hobby, any fandom, any franchise. All they ever manage to do is stir up conflict, resentment, and division, driving people away and turning fans against the very company that tries to pander to them. Because their very reason for existing is to undermine and destroy the thing they claim that they're trying to save. And if you've got any common sense whatsoever, or any love for the fandom that you're so passionate about, you'll think very carefully before bending the knee to them. Anyway, that's all I've got for today.
Yeah, well, that was the Critical Drinker. Great stuff. On point. Let's see what happens to Warhammer. It's It's gonna be interesting. Anyway, this was Quizzer Citizen. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and already. That was the Critical Drinker. What a time to be alive. Have a nice day. Bye bye.